Panel number 2, how do I get funding? We're talking money right now for my deep tech startup. I call on stage Veronica, Sasha, Thomas, and Roberto, and I think that 2 of them will be... Sorry? Yes. Have a seat. You don't have a mic. Please get one. You have 45 minutes. Have a nice panel. Remember to speak right in the mic like this, okay? And put off your badges, please. I've been told. Yes, put off. No, just put it off. It's for the camera to look good. Have a nice panel. Thank you very much.
Much better.
Hello,
good afternoon. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So we will follow with another session, the roundtable, how I did get funding for my deep tech startup. So I welcome on the stage only Sasha Koniev, the CEO of Scindivia, and welcome on the TV Roberto Iacone, the CEO of Alentis, and Thomas Shirley, the CEO of Baden Campus. So let's start because we have only 40 minutes. Yes, we have only 40 minutes to talk about maybe one of the most important topic, which is of big interest for you, how I did get funding for my startup. So let's start. So Sasha, Scindivia is a startup created in 2014, is a biotech company dedicated to the development of new generation treatment against cancer by harnessing unique properties of tumor hallmarks and microenvironments. Am I right? Still good?
Correct.
The company develops innovative bioconjugation technologies and which allow coupling of biological agents and with therapeutical molecules. You were in the story of Scindivia at the beginning. You are the excellent example of student entrepreneur, let's say. Can you tell us maybe more about the beginnings of the startup? Which lab, how did you get the really first funding that allowed the proof of concept, and which made the decision for you to be a future CEO?
Yes, thanks. Sasha Koniev, CEO of Scindivia, as Veronica said. So just to give you a general overview, we are a small company, a small biotech company. We're only 6 in the company. And we do the drug development, but our product is now in the clinic. One of the products, the other is approaching the regulatory toxicity, and the third product is also in the development. So we have 3 products while being a tiny company. And as Veronica said, yes, we have established the company just after doing our PhDs, and it was a transition from the lab into the startupping. And in our case, in my case, the most important person has been the head of laboratory, who was the PI, the principal investigator, whose tradition in the laboratory was transferring from the lab into the companies. So it was a rather easy transition. But to answer your question, the first real money to do the development in the company came from the technology transfer office, a French office called SAT, who gave us first cash for maturation program, which allowed us to develop the technology and further attract first partners, industrial partners and biotechs. So this was our beginning, and I guess we can continue in more details should you have any questions here.
Yes, but now I will address another question to Roberto. So Alentis, for just a short introduction, is a Swiss-French biotech company spun out of actually University of Strasbourg. It develops, breakthrough treatments for fibrotic diseases and associated cancers. So you previously discovered functional role of Claudin-1. So the biotech company is based on the technology of Claudin-1. And Alentis further has a platform technology also for the discovery and validation of novel targets in liver disease. Roberto, you joined Alentis in July 2020, so you were not there at the beginning of the company. However, could you tell us something about the starts of the company? Who was the initial team, and who received the first funding to develop the proof of concept and the Allentis basic technology?
Yes, so I think it's Allentis is a nice and another great example how to create the biotech in Europe, and particularly between France and Switzerland, a unique talent pool, for us. So essentially, the initial founder has been Thomas Baumert, so a full professor of medicine at the University of Strasbourg, and he's very entrepreneurial. He understood immediately the value of Clouding One as the antifibrotic company. So then he applied it to Basel Lounge, that is an incubator in Switzerland that gives the possibility to have really seed money for creation. So this is around 250,000 Swiss francs. So the company has been incorporated. And then with that incorporation, there was like another CEO, Mark, that comes on board, and the company started to get the momentum. So that was really a nice synergy, because there was incredible science and innovation from Thomas and University of Strasbourg. And then, with Switzerland, we could give Allentis the right dimension to develop then the antibody to the next step. So then I came on board. We raised, essentially good money, Series B, with the top investor in the world, from France, Jato, BPI, and as well from US, Morningside, another Series A investor. And with that particular cash and with the new team, really of the people that are drug developer, we now have Allentis, that is a clinical stage company, and we have a unique antifibrotic effect that can be used in strong unmet medical need in kidney and liver, and as well in oncology. So a very nice way to team up, between Switzerland and France with these two talent pools and innovation to create value in Europe, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Let's continue with Thomas from Baden campus. It will be a little bit different because you're not a startup, but your point of view will be such more interesting, especially for German companies. You are an innovative platform. Baden campus is actually a community which connects startups, SMEs, municipalities, talents, and scientific institutions. So you are a two-in-one innovation platform, at the same time having an incubator, also an accelerator, and you create solutions for society focused on three main topics. Am I right? Deep techs, industrial techs, something like sensors, microtechs, and so on, and health techs. So you have been created in 2017, and you have also a co-working space for startups, tailor-made coaching program, and gives an excellent vision on how to fund and how to build the funding strategy for your startups. So maybe the question is, if I am a startup and I want to go further, what's the entry point to join this community? And what's the starting point? I have to be created already? The technology has already to be licensed, or it's completely open? Oh.
Yeah, first of all, hello everybody, and thanks for having me here. Thanks for the question, Veronica. We have created a platform in a way that it's actually open to different stages of development, so that you can actually find some support when you only have an idea in a very early stage, when you're still a student, where we also collaborate with different universities from the Southern Upper Rhine region, also with French universities. And then we continue our programs. So our sweet spot, I'd say, would be spin-offs from universities, researcher teams that have already created the technology and are thinking about commercialization now. And in Germany, they usually often have exist funding for that and try to want to get the next step. But we also do have formats for established startups where we, as you said, connect them with corporates or university hospital or Freiburg or other actors that might be interesting for them, also investors. So that is something that actually also startups that have gone a certain way, or scale-ups, as you sometimes call them, can also use, and that is then not so much of an individual support or a coaching, but rather a networking support that we can give them.
Okay, thank you. Now, I would like to speak about one of the important steps in how to build a funding strategy. It's actually the accompanying, coaching, mentoring, building a team. It's very important in funding strategy, right? So, Roberto, you already spoke about a little bit about Basel Launch and the first funding that they provided. But Basel Launch, so it's maybe the audience didn't hear very well what is it exactly, but it's operated by Basel Area Business and Innovation, and so it's like a kind of promotion agency for Basel area, because they connect with big pharmaceutical companies and big venture capitals. Concretely, how they helped Alantis at the beginning.
Yeah, so thank you, Veronica. So it's a good question. So I think there are two aspects. The first aspect that is very, so the Basel Launch has an advisory committee that is very prestigious. They have pharma company, professional VC investor. So when they do the selection, this gives a sort of a pedigree, a sort of endorsement of the science of the proposal. So this is one aspect. And then the other aspect that they give, like a fund at that time was around 250,000, that is not dilutive, so they don't receive shares for this investment that they do in the company, but is really given, to do the first step within the corporation, start to get running, to connect with investor. And that's always a very critical moment, for company creation. So the first seed investment, that gives the opportunity to the people, for example, to be operative, for 6 months, 1 year, and then to get, the next financing round.
Mm-hmm. And Sasha, in France, you were part of an incubation program, specific one, and also how did you involve the researcher, co-inventor of the patent to the startup?
Yeah, in our case, we had a co-inventor who is one of the researchers, and he joined the team and became the co-founder. So it was pretty straight access to the researcher, because he was interested by the product, and he wanted this product to go into the clinic as fast as possible. And at some point, he realized that the fastest way was creating the company and transferring everything, and then joining the company as a co-founder. So it was pretty straightforward access.
And in France, you have a local incubator also that helps and coaches the startup?
Yes, it still exists. It's called Semia. At that time, we launched the company in 2014. There was no base launch yet. Otherwise, we would have also probably tried to postulate.
No, you're on the right place here.
Yeah, but we're in a great place here as well, because we have a great incubator, Semia, that improves every year. And we were helped a lot with the construction of our team, because our president also had the link between the technology transfer office, SAT, and the incubator. So we were very happy to have this incubator with us. And it was less about the cash-in, but more about the help with the structuration of the company, after all.
Okay, so very important in the life of your company. Same question, maybe, Roberto. The researcher is still part of the company, and from your point of view, is it important for investors to see that the researcher is still part of the team?
Yes, it is. It is very important. It's very important for different reasons. So first of all, the researcher, the funding scientist brings a lot of know-how that is very important for the success of the company. And it's not just the founder, but as well the team, the organization that is behind this personality. So this is very important. But on the other end, the founder needs to be very entrepreneurial as well, to develop with the company, right? So that's very important that for founders, they understand, the business aspect, that, step by step, the company becomes a global company, becomes, more complex. For example, there is other mechanism of action, there are other ideas. But in this case, we've been very happy and lucky to have a founder like Thomas that is definitely, he fulfill all these very important steps.
And Thomas, in your case, one of the starting point to be part of Baden campus is what you call a Startup Lab. It's a kind of a coaching program, or could you tell us a little bit more about what it is exactly?
Startup Lab is our first format in that row of growing or formats that grow with the companies along their maturity. And we usually do that together with universities on different topics. So, for example, last year we did a cross-border format on hydrogen with CEA, the Collectivité Européenne d'Alsace. But we also have involved University of Freiburg already in such formats, or Hochschule Offenburg, Hochschule Furtwangen. And the idea is actually to kind of support students to get into funding a startup, to motivate them to fund some startups. And in the recent years, we also have already at this stage involved corporates that provide certain challenges or counterparts for the startups so that they can make the experience that was mentioned in the former talk, to actually know what your potential clients want to have, to do kind of a reality check from a very early stage. Because in our experience, and I think that is not only ours, the longer researchers or technicians just play with technology and try to develop something what they think is good for the world, that the higher is the risk that the actual clients don't really want it. So we try to connect early funders in that format already with potential clients to support them in a focused development of what they want to do.
Okay. Now, if we focus on another stage, really, the company first funding. Okay. So, Sasha, you was here at the beginning. What was the shared capital in 2014?
Yeah, this is a question I'm often asked by the future co-founders, especially from the lab. They think they need a lot of money to found the company, but in our case, it was 10,000 euro. And we were 6 co-founders, so you can calculate it was not a huge sum of money which allowed us to create. But you have to remember that create the company is easy and cheap. And then we had very fast trying to find some money, non-dilutive ideally, to fund the first proof of concept or proof of principle studies.
Yes, because it was very difficult at the beginning, because at the same time you have to do both continue the scientific work and also searching for early stage seed funding that will help you to progress in the technology development. But so, which was your strategy to search, for example, take part in some national contests or apply for other public grants? Or
yeah, I guess this is for all startups, it's the same story. It's knocking on every door. And so in our case, yeah, we were doing science, but from the beginning we were split into a guy whom we called Chief Excel Officer, who had to send all the requests and all the contests, and the Chief PowerPoint Officer. It was my role to present on all these contests. And yeah, we applied everywhere initially to get all the non-dilutive funding that existed at that time.
So how much did you get in this non-dilutive funding?
Overall, with all the cash, we raised about 800,000 euro. And in parallel, this allowed us to be visible to other people, and we had our first contracts. This is where we really needed money, fundraising, in the beginning of our story. So we're able to live on the contracts because initially we were a platform company. We had a platform which we proposed to everyone, but at some point later we realized that every platform needs the product. And this is how we switched in a way to a product company. And this is when we realized we need the normal seed round in order to be able to develop our first product.
Mm-hmm. So with this, it's quite impressive, 800 euros in non-dilutive money, I think. But which milestone actually did you reach with this money?
Yeah, what we actually were able to reach is similar for all biotechs. You start with in vitro validation, then you need in vivo, in animal validation, and then you need at least some signs of the toxicity, so toxicity studies. So this is what we were able to do with our first product. That is now in the clinic is a spin-off. So actually, all similar steps for every biotech, I guess, in vitro, in vivo tox.
And Roberto, it was so you spoke about the Basel launch seed fund, so up to 250,000 euros, 100,000 euros. Which milestone did you reach with this money? You said it was a non-dilutive money, so it was a loan, a convertible loan. What was it? Under which form Basel launch financed this?
Sorry, I was on mute. It was not a. Yes, it was. I was on mute. No, it was not a convertible loan. It was really like non-dilutive seed money. To be honest, with that money, you cannot do so much, and indeed, it was not done so much. So the key, let's say, milestone have been really the incorporation of the company, starting to set it up, the legal frame for the investment. And then very, very quickly, Allentis managed to have the Series A, where BPI was, of course, one of our investors. And that with that money, Allentis could then advance the antibody to the next milestone. So I would say, for the value creation, the Series A has been the pivotal step.
Okay, we will talk about this series a little bit later. But Thomas, when you take part of the accelerator program of Baden Campus, you also propose an early stage funding. For example, the Startup Baden-Württemberg convertible loan. Could you explain us a little bit more what it is and how it functions?
Mm-hmm. The Startup BW pre-seed program, as it's actually called, is something that has been around for, I think, almost 4 years now, created by the state of the Federal Ministry of Economics in Baden-Württemberg. And the idea is to give early stage startups convertible loans up to, in the beginning, it was even up to 400,000 euros. Now it's 320,000 is the highest amount you can get. And you have a private co-funding in it. So you get about 160,000 euros from the state public money, and you can match up to another 160,000 or at least 40,000 euros with a private co-investor, which can be a business angel or several business angels or a strategic investor, a corporate. And this is something that has been very successful, actually. And it was paired in the last 2 years with a COVID support program, Startup BW project. So I think it's over, sorry for that now, I think it's over 30 million euros that are around, or even 40. And since it is repayable, also the money can be reinvested in new startups. And we are a partner of that program, so we can you can apply via Baden Campus and get into that for getting that money. And I mean, there come some more conditions with it, which are too detailed to explain now. But what we then try to do is supporting startups in getting into the next funding stage with that money that can sometimes last for just a few months, actually, for depending on the technology, on the size of the team. Sometimes it also lasts for a year or something for the teams. But actually, when you get that money, you're already should think about what is the next funding that you can get, and you actually even have to show a plan when applying for the convertible loan. What is your next step regarding funding?
But when you apply for this seed funding, you don't need any private investor at the same time at this stage?
Yes, you do. You can't just get public money, and because the private investor is kind of the legitimization that there's something good in the technology, because there's no due diligence in a normal sense is done here, but you need to get information by a market response or by an investor response, and then also for an estimation of technology and everything. So that's why the private co-investment is actually important to ensure that the technology or the solution that the startups provide have a good potential, besides other indicators such as first clients and things like that.
Okay, but you help so the startup at this stage also find this private investor to access this convertible loan, right? Okay, interesting. Sasha, I would like to focus on the first financial round because you already realized the first financial round, but a little bit before. You have been created in 2014. And your first financial round was in 2019. So there were 5 years of, I don't know how we did, but I would like you to explain us how did you finance these 5 years? You spoke me about a very interesting strategy to different possibilities of cash into the company. Could you maybe explain to the audience?
When we established the company in 2014, the technology still needed to be tuned in and to be adjusted to the requirements. So we started by proposing this technology to different partners. And this is how we got our first contracts with the big pharma and several biotechs. And this is what allowed us actually to live through and to adjust the technology, to prepare it for being ready enough to do the product, and then to find actually, so because we work with antibody drug conjugates in part, we needed antibody part as well. And so in order to attract the potential partners, we had to work on our technology. And this is what actually took us some time. And in 2018, we started already looking for the investment, which resulted in 2019 with the first seed investment, which allowed us to generate our first candidate ourselves, because before we were developing candidates for our partners, more or less. And this was our first candidate that we decided to do ourselves.
So, but doing this kind of platform work, it was very interesting because you had the cash in, but it slowed you down a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, obviously. And I guess every startup should realize that there are two big families, I would say, of the startups, probably. The platforms, so-called, and the product companies. But the reality and the truth is that every company should be a product company, even if it's a platform company, because you have to show something on in the real world example, which is the product. So after all, when you work for other companies, you will never grow so fast as you work for yourself, after all. And so at some point, we had enough data to launch our program, and this is what actually allowed us to accelerate the development.
Mm-hmm. But you also had another interesting one because you licensed another patent in 2017. Yes, and you out-licensed also, and you created a spin-off, let's say, of Sindivia. So it's also a potential possibility of cashing.
So we at Sindivia were lucky to have all possible ways of developing the company. So we started by out-licensing our technology for one target of our partner, and so this is a pure cash-in with no big problems, but it's not a huge cash-in. So the second type of products was when we actually co-founded a spin-off financed by an investment fund. And this spin-off operates in the United States. And in this spin-off, we have shares, non-dilutable shares. And this is kind of long-term investment for the company because we own a part of another company, spin-off, completely financed with a big fund. And third kind of investment, this is pure investment for the company for the development of its own products. So we went through all different ways of financing, and now we are in the stage of preparing for the bigger round for our own company.
But you realized the first fundraising before, so 1 million euro. Yeah, great. In 2019. And so which were the necessary requirements actually to really close this first round, and which is the milestone for what is dedicated this money?
We touched upon this subject already, and in our case, so the technology already got an investment previously with non-dilutive funding and our partners, And so this, actually it was more than 1 million, but 1 million of inequity, but overall it's about 2.5 million. It allowed us to generate, so to get this money first, we had to have a candidate. So what we had to do is to go through applying our technologies to different, in our case, antibodies, and finding the product which will work best. And this allowed us to generate the hit product, which we then optimized and created lead product. And so having this data, hit to lead optimizations, and the first results in vitro, in vivo, and in tox, as previously, this is what allowed us to secure the financing to further develop the product and to prepare it mature enough for the regulatory toxicology, and then later for the clinical proof of concept.
Okay, interesting. Roberto, you grew up very, very fast because you already realized 2 financial rounds. When Ellentis closed the first financial round?
So the Series A was in April 2019. Yeah.
And how much money did you raise?
This was initially 12.5 million Swiss franc, and this was with the 4 main investors, so Pureos, Biomed, BPI, and Schroeder, and ATGF fund in Germany. Yeah.
Okay, very, very impressive. So 3 investors, and to what did you dedicate this huge amount of money, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, in science, in innovation is never enough, the money. But essentially, the Series A was used to humanize the antibody that was originally. Maybe who is on the Zoom can go on mute. So the original antibody was discovered in Strasbourg, as I say, and with the Series A, the antibody that was a research antibody was humanized and was developed to become a product. Means being produced under GMP qualification, be then tested, under regulatory timelines and regulatory quality control, for eventually clinical development. So that was the major use of the Series A, and on top there was as well a first wave of expansion. So what the team realized that Claudin-1 was not just a target for liver fibrosis, but became evident that this was a pan anti-fibrotic approach with a multi-organ approach. So then this was opening up, and Thomas as well has been very fundamental for this, to the next level when we raised the Series B of $67 million. Yeah.
Yes, very impressive. Thomas, do you also accompany your startup in your community to a series, or you stop your coaching, mentoring before you focus only on seed, or you also accompany startups unlimited?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So far we mostly have focused on pre-seed and seed stage, but the experience shows that we are, since we, as you said in the beginning, have started only in 2017, we are growing with our team. So and we're currently working on options to also support Series A rounds. But maybe a few words on how we actually do it. So we have established kind of a process here, usually with teams that we already know from the pre. As you said before, we have different verticals. So we then have usually a specialist on either smart city or life science, or obviously very different also regarding funding. So life science startups funded completely differently than, for example, a software startup or startups that can go to market earlier because they don't have to do all the regulations. And so we, with that process and different specialists that work with the teams, we also bring in a network of lawyers, tax specialists, and especially also other organizations that help with funding. So The Three National Health Tech Days is an event that we do together with SEMIA and the Innovation Office of University of Basel, a big funding event where you can meet investors, but we also connect bilaterally, and then do just strategy, work on a funding strategy with the teams, and connect them with either business angels or corporates or VCs from our network. But what is important here actually to say is that we are just a support. So if the team is not the driving force behind it and does the things that were already mentioned already in this session as well, then they won't succeed. So we can actually just speed up things a bit, support a bit, bring in some experience, but not really be the ones to push the actual funding process.
Okay, Sasha, you took notes. You also can be helped by Baden Campus network as well. It's not only exclusively dedicated to German companies, right? Everybody has access to your community. Excellent. Roberto, you touch a word about the second really important fundraising round. So in June 2021, and 67 million euros. It's quite impressive in such a few time of Allentis life, let's say. According actually to your press release, so you put together 7 different investors around the table, and it's you, Roberto, who led the company at this moment. So could you maybe tell to future startuppers, how did you proceed to bring all these investors together? Because 7 investors, it takes a long time, and so it's a very important amount of money. So how did you proceed to bring them all together? And
yeah, I mean, of course, there is an experience that you build on the ground, right? So this is thanks to my previous experience, at Roche, at the previous fund that I was working. But in reality, what really counts is the quality of the science, the vision that the company has to bring this medicine to the patients. And and of course, like already discussed, the quality of the team. So once you have these 3 important fundamental, components of your company, then it's always very important, to bring the people together. But let's say it's much easier when you of course offer an opportunity to an investor that can become eventually a medicine for patients. So this was the secret. And on the other hand, we were oversubscribed at this Series B, so we had really the luxury position to cherry pick, the best investor for us. So people like Raphael Turjan at Jado in Paris, very entrepreneurial, like a physician by training. Then as well going to US, to Morningside, a deep pocket investor with huge credibility, worldwide. So this was, a privileged situation for us to be able to decide, which are the best investor for Allentis.
Mm-hmm. And Sasha, if we summarize, since you have been created, you progressively accumulated 4 million euros. Yeah, so with your
around 5 years, I guess. Yeah, overall. Yeah.
About with all the non-dilutive and dilutive funding, accumulating grants, loans, equity, everything. And so, what's next? When do you plan the next fundraising round?
Yeah, now we have everything in hands to move towards the final validation of the product we are developing. And so in 12 to 8 months, we have scheduled around a plus investment of $25 million if everything goes well. And so this is the plan. And so as usual in biotech, you do whatever you want, whatever you can to spend the money you could raise to generate as much data as possible. And the first signs of the efficacy of the product we are developing shows us that we are on a good way and everything go for now as planned. So our next milestone would be the investment for the regulatory and clinical development of our own product.
And so how much money do you target?
So in 12 to 18 months, it's around $25 million the next round. This is what we need to develop the candidate in regulatory and bring it to the clinical POC, proof of concept.
Okay, okay. Thomas, maybe do you have an example, a success story of one of your startup that you accompanied and that raised a huge amount of money? Maybe do you have an example to give us?
Yeah, we have a few that raised volumes between, let's say, 1 million and 3.5 million euros. One that indeed got 3.5 million euros last year is Paretos. It's a software as a service startup which does data science to go, as they call it. The team managed to get together different investors, including VCs, as well as business angels, other entrepreneurs that also bring in some networks. So they made quite a big cap table, as you said, but they use the money now that they are using the money currently to increasing the team to, as it's often the case in that seed stage, getting from a product which has some pilot clients into a proper company with a big team with all processes established, sales and all these things. So that would be, for example, a team from our network, but we also had others. Cubic 3D is a company that does large scale 3D printing, and they have found a strategic investor because they need big machines. So this is often a different topic for startups to grow. Sometimes it makes sense to get a strategic investor in. So this is also a funding story from last year, or another startup which does radar technology, radar sensors, that has got funding from a partly public investment vehicle. So there are quite different options actually to go with.
Okay, that was interesting because we are speaking here about exclusively biotech companies. So we maybe don't speak about the same amounts of money when the fundraising is much bigger for biotechs than for other tech companies. Well, we can go to the end because I think we very well discussed we made a tour about the possibilities of funding the companies. So maybe a last advice for people here. Do you have any advice for emerging projects that to successfully get funding for their deep tech startup?
Well, I guess Roberto already said it. It's a nice team, nice product, and execution. I guess everyone would agree.
A personal, I don't know, advice, not the, I don't know, just maybe how, if you do it again, for example, this creation of a startup, you do the same thing or you change something?
I guess each startup and each situation is unique, and we just touched upon the scale of the money raised. This should not either be the main goal, this size. If you don't need, you have to raise as much as you need to execute fast enough, and if you cannot execute faster, you don't have to raise. Why would you want to be diluted with this investment? They're all dilutive, you have to remember. And as a general, I always say that if you believe in your product and go for it. This is the only advice I can give. If you feel entrepreneurial, go for it.
Gentlemen, do you have something to add, Roberto or Thomas? Some personal advice to successfully raise funds?
No, I mean, just to add, when you do innovation in the end, especially in biotech, you innovate with the medicine. So always keep in mind, the last goal, that is to, in the end, develop a medicine.
And Thomas, something?
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe some do's or don'ts. Sorry. What I sometimes see is that if startups get a interest from one or two investors, they forget to still look after other investors, which is kind of a risk. So as long as you have not signed a contract, only a term sheet, you think you should still go and look into different directions without being intransparent or something like that. But I think you should not rely on one source too early. Also, you should not start too late. We often have the case that teams come when they already see that in 3 months they run out of money, or in 4, which is actually not enough time to get a funding round together. So start early on. Actually, when you get, as I said before, when you get some money, you should also already think about the next stage. And then the third point, I think, would be to also talk to other startups, or to get as much experience in as you can get, also for I'd say the hardship in getting funding, because there are some teams that can pick what investor they want to have, and that can also say, well, we don't want your money, we have enough. But most of the teams, especially in the first funding rounds, will also get some rejections, especially if they don't know the game yet. So that is also something that you have to deal with, and I should not begin to doubt. But so that is something what you can figure out with other startups that have maybe made similar experiences in a better way than if you do it only on your own. So that would be some things that I would recommend.
This is a good point that Thomas, I would like to join as well. This you should consider 12 months before the moment you first contact, at least 12 months, and the moment you get everything on your bank account. So you have to keep it in mind, especially when your development plan for the money you have just raised is for 12 months. It means you have to start raising the round just after you have just raised the round. So it's a constant way of raising, generating data, re-raising.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think we can conclude this session. We are perfectly on time to go lunch. So thank you very much, everybody, and bon appétit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.